I installed a nanny cam to watch our new puppy while at work, but instead caught my girlfriend's sister explaining their 6-month plan to access my trust fund. The puppy was chewing my charging cable at 2:14 p.m. when I opened the app on my phone. I'd installed the camera that morning, a discreet little device hidden in a fake plant on the bookshelf, angled perfectly to watch our 8-week-old golden retriever destroy my apartment while I worked. Cooper, named after my grandfather who'd left me the trust fund that made my comfortable life possible, was supposed to be crate-trained, but Veronica insisted he needed freedom to explore. I'd relented because I always relented with Veronica. 3 years of saying yes to everything she wanted because I thought that's what love looked like. The camera feed loaded on my phone screen during a boring Monday afternoon at the office, and instead of Cooper tearing apart my shoe collection, I saw Veronica's older sister, Sienna, sitting on my couch with a manila folder open on the coffee table. Veronica was next to her, both of them leaning over documents I couldn't quite make out from the camera angle. I turned up the volume on my wireless earbuds, expecting to hear them planning some surprise for me, maybe discussing birthday ideas since mine was coming up in 6 weeks. What I heard instead made my blood freeze in my veins. "The 6-month mark is critical," Sienna said, tapping a pen against what looked like a legal document. "Washington state law recognizes committed intimate relationships with specific criteria. You've been living together for 4 months now, which means in 2 more months you'll have legal standing to claim a portion of assets acquired or appreciated during cohabitation." Veronica nodded, her blonde hair falling forward as she studied the papers. "And his trust fund counts as appreciation because it's been generating income this whole time?" Sienna, who I knew was a paralegal at some downtown firm, smiled. "Exactly. The monthly distributions he receives are considered income. Once you hit 6 months of cohabitation, you can argue you contributed to the household, supported his ability to manage those assets, and deserve compensation if the relationship ends." My hand started shaking so badly I had to set my coffee down. This couldn't be real. This had to be a misunderstanding. But Sienna kept talking, her voice clinical and precise like she was explaining a business transaction. "I'd been dating Veronica for 3 years, met her at a charity gala for the Seattle Children's Hospital, where my family's foundation was a major donor. She worked in event planning, beautiful and charming, the kind of woman who remembered everyone's names and made them feel important. 28 years old to my 32, with an easy laugh and genuine warmth that drew people in. Or what I'd thought was genuine. We'd dated for 2 years before she suggested moving in together, framing it as a practical decision since she was spending most nights at my place anyway. Her apartment lease was ending, rent in Seattle was insane, and we loved each other, so why pay for 2 places? I'd been thrilled. Saw it as the natural progression toward marriage, toward building a life together. My parents loved her. My friends thought she was great. Everyone said I was lucky to have found someone so down-to-earth despite my family's wealth, someone who seemed to genuinely love me for who I was, rather than what I had. I'd believed them, believed her. 4 months into living together, and I'd been planning to propose at Christmas, had already started looking at rings, imagining our future. The camera feed continued streaming as I sat frozen at my desk. Sienna pulled out another document, this one with highlighted sections I still couldn't read clearly. "Now, the trust fund itself is protected as separate property since it predated the relationship," she explained. "But the income it generates during cohabitation is a different story. He receives monthly distributions of what, around 15,000? Veronica nodded. "Sometimes more depending on investment performance. Last month was almost 18,000. Sienna wrote something down. "Over 6 months, that's conservatively 90,000 in distributed income. You can argue you're entitled to half of that as community-like property. Plus, there's the appreciation of his investment accounts, the renovation he did on this condo that increased its value, the car he bought. All of that happened during or right before cohabitation. It adds up quickly." I felt sick. Actually, physically sick. The coffee I'd just drunk threatened to come back up. Veronica leaned back against the couch cushions, my couch that I'd bought with money from my trust fund, in my condo that I'd owned for 5 years before meeting her. "What about the engagement ring?" she asked. "If he proposes before 6 months, does that change anything?" Sienna shook her head. "Engagement ring is a conditional gift in Washington. If the marriage doesn't happen, he can demand it back. But that's separate from the cohabitation claim. Actually, an engagement might work in your favor, shows deeper commitment, strengthens your argument that you believed in a permanent partnership and arranged your life accordingly." Veronica smiled. Not the warm, loving smile I'd seen 1,000 times. Something colder, calculating. "He's definitely going to propose soon. He's been acting weird, sneaking around, probably ring shopping. Men are so predictable." My chest tightened. I had been ring shopping. 2 weeks ago, at a jeweler in downtown Seattle, looking at princess-cut diamonds because Veronica had mentioned once, casually, that she thought they were elegant. I minimized the camera app and opened my text thread with Veronica. Our last messages were from this morning. Her: "Have a great day at work. Can't wait to see you tonight." Me: "Love you. Think Cooper is going to destroy the apartment while we're gone?" Her: "He'll be fine. He's just a baby. See you at 6. I stared at those messages, at the heart emoji, at the casual affection that now felt like part of an elaborate performance. Reopened the camera feed. Sienna was putting documents back into the manila folder, The key is timing, she said. You need to hit that 6-month mark, let him propose if he's going to, then wait maybe another 2 or 3 months to build an even stronger case. Then you end it. Doesn't have to be dramatic. Just irreconcilable differences, wanting different things, growing apart. Standard breakup language. But you do it through my firm. We'll send him a letter outlining your claim to shared assets. Most guys will settle rather than fight, especially wealthy ones who don't want the publicity. Veronica stood up, walked toward the kitchen, and I got a clear view of her face for the first time since I'd started watching. She looked normal, happy even, like she'd just finished planning a vacation rather than plotting to defraud me. What do you think we can get? She asked from off-screen. Sienna's voice carried clearly through the audio. Conservatively? $250,000. Half of the income distributions, percentage of the condo appreciation, compensation for domestic contributions, emotional distress from the breakup. If we push hard and he wants to avoid court, maybe $300,000, possibly more if we can document specific ways you supported his lifestyle or career. Veronica laughed. Actually laughed. His career is managing his trust fund. The man doesn't even have a real job. Sienna laughed too. Even better. Makes the argument that you provided essential domestic support that enabled him to focus on his assets. You've been cooking, cleaning, managing the household. That has economic value. I closed the app and sat staring at my computer screen without seeing it. My hands were trembling. My heart was racing. 3 years. 3 years of what I thought was love, of building a relationship, of planning a future. All of it a con. A calculated scheme to extract money from me. I thought about every moment we'd shared. The weekend trip to Vancouver where she'd cried watching the sunset because she said she'd never felt so happy. The night I got food poisoning and she stayed up taking care of me, bringing me water, holding my hair back. The Sunday mornings we spent in bed reading the paper and drinking coffee, her head on my chest, talking about someday buying a house with a yard for kids and dogs. Had any of it been real? Or had she been counting down the days until she hit 6 months, until she could execute whatever plan she'd made with her sister? I pulled up my contacts and scrolled to my attorney, Lawrence Kellerman, a partner at one of Seattle's most prestigious firms who'd handled my family's legal matters for 20 years. Hit call before I could second-guess myself. He answered on the third ring. Gavin, good to hear from you. What can I do for you? I tried to steady my voice. Lawrence, I need advice. Confidentially. It's urgent. His tone shifted immediately, professional alertness replacing casual friendliness. Of course. What's going on? I told him everything. The nanny cam, the conversation I'd overheard, Sienna's legal strategy, Veronica's participation. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end. Do you still have access to that camera feed? Lawrence asked. Can you record what you're seeing? I logged back into the app. Sienna and Veronica were still in my living room, now discussing logistics. Yes, they're still there, still talking. Lawrence's voice was firm. Record everything. Screen record if you have to, but get a clean audio and video file. Washington is a 2-party consent state for recordings, which complicates things, but there are exceptions. This is your home, you have a legitimate security purpose for the camera, and they're discussing potential fraud. We can work with this. I started screen recording on my phone, capturing the camera feed. What do I do after I have the recording? Lawrence paused, thinking. Don't confront them yet. We need to understand the full scope of what they're planning. Document everything. Text messages, emails, any financial transactions. Check your bank accounts for any unusual activity. I'll need to review that recording, consult with a colleague who specializes in fraud cases, and we'll strategize. Can you come to my office after work? Say 7 o'clock? I agreed, already feeling slightly more in control just having a plan. Gavin, Lawrence added. I'm sorry. I know this must be devastating. But you found out before they succeeded. That's crucial. I watched the camera feed for another 10 minutes, recording everything. Sienna pulled out her phone and started typing something. I'm sending you a timeline, she told Veronica. Dates you need to hit, documentation you should collect, pictures of you two together, evidence of domestic contributions, anything that shows commitment and integration of your lives. Social media posts work well. The more you look like an established couple, the stronger the claim. Veronica scrolled through her phone. I have tons of photos. We're always doing things together, going places. His Instagram is full of us. Sienna nodded approvingly. Perfect. And make sure you're seen as the supportive partner. Cook his favorite meals, attend his family events, be the girlfriend everyone thinks he's lucky to have. The more invested you appear, the more credible your claim of believing in a permanent partnership. They spent another 15 minutes reviewing details before Sienna packed up her folder and left. I watched Veronica walk her to the door, hug her goodbye, then return to the living room where Cooper was sleeping in his crate. She bent down, opened the crate, and lifted the puppy into her arms, cuddling him against her chest. To anyone watching without context, she looked like a loving woman bonding with her pet. To me, knowing what I knew, every gesture felt like part of the performance. She carried Cooper to the couch, sat down with him in her lap, and pulled out her phone. I watched her type for a few seconds, then my phone buzzed with a text. Veronica. Cooper is being so good today, barely any accidents. I think he's settling in. I stared at the message. She was texting me while sitting in my apartment plotting to defraud me, and she could sound so normal, so affectionate. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. I didn't respond to her text. Couldn't. What would I even say? Instead, I forwarded the screen recording to Lawrence's email with a note. Here's the footage. See you at 7. Then I sat at my desk trying to process the magnitude of what I'd discovered. My coworkers probably thought I was working intensely because I was so quiet, but internally, I was spiraling. 3 years of my life revealed as a lie. The woman I'd been planning to marry was conspiring with her sister to extract hundreds of thousands of dollars from me. The puppy we'd adopted together last week, that I'd seen as the first step toward building a family, was now just another prop in her performance of commitment. Everything was poisoned. Every memory now suspect. The afternoon crawled by. I couldn't concentrate on work, just sat refreshing the camera feed periodically to see what Veronica was doing. Mostly normal things, playing with Cooper, doing laundry, making herself lunch. At one point, she FaceTimed with someone, and I turned up the volume hoping to catch something relevant, but it was just a friend discussing some event planning work drama. She looked happy, relaxed, completely untroubled by having just spent an hour plotting fraud with her sister. The duality was frightening. How could someone compartmentalize like that? How could she discuss destroying me financially and then immediately shift to worrying about whether Cooper needed a different brand of puppy food? At 5:30, I packed up and left the office early, telling my assistant I had a personal matter to handle. Drove to Lawrence's firm downtown, a sleek high-rise with marble floors and original art on the walls. His receptionist showed me to a conference room where Lawrence was waiting with another attorney, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Gavin, this is Judith Reynolds," Lawrence said. "She's one of the best fraud attorneys in the state. I asked her to consult on your situation." Judith shook my hand with a firm grip. "I've reviewed the recording you sent. This is one of the more brazen fraud schemes I've seen, and I've seen a lot. Let's talk about your options." We spent the next 2 hours dissecting everything. Judith explained that what Veronica and Sienna were planning wasn't technically illegal in the sense of being criminally prosecutable, but it constituted civil fraud because it involved knowingly making false representations about the nature of the relationship and their intentions. "The problem," Judith said, "is that Washington's committed intimate relationship doctrine is designed to protect people who genuinely believed they were in a marital-type partnership. It's meant for situations where someone contributed to a household for years, helped build assets, and then got left with nothing. It's not meant for situations like this, where someone enters a relationship with the predetermined intent to exploit it for financial gain." Lawrence nodded. "The recording gives us leverage. It proves fraudulent intent from the beginning, but we need to be strategic about how we use it." I asked the question that had been burning in my mind all afternoon. "Can I just kick her out? Tell her to leave and be done with it?" Judith shook her head. "Not that simple. She has tenant rights. You'd need to go through a formal eviction process, which takes time. Plus, if you confront her now, she'll know you discovered the plan. She might accelerate her timeline, file a claim immediately, make this messy. Better to control the narrative." Lawrence pulled out a legal pad and started sketching out a strategy. "Here's what I recommend. First, we file a preemptive lawsuit against both Veronica and Sienna for conspiracy to commit fraud, unjust enrichment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We attach the recording as evidence. That puts them on the defensive immediately. Second, we send Veronica a formal notice to vacate the premises within 30 days, which is more generous than legally required but shows good faith. Third, we freeze any shared accounts, revoke any access she has to your finances, and document every asset to prevent her from claiming contributions she didn't make." Judith added, "We'll also want to file a restraining order preventing her from making any claims to your assets while the fraud case is pending. The recording should be sufficient evidence to get a temporary restraining order granted quickly. Once we have that, she can't file her own claim without violating the court order." I felt a surge of relief mixed with residual devastation. They had a plan. We could fight this, but it didn't change the fundamental reality that the woman I loved had been using me. "What about the recording itself?" I asked. "Is it admissible? You said Washington is two-party consent." Lawrence nodded. "It's complicated. Generally, yes, two-party consent is required, but there are exceptions for security cameras in your own home, especially when capturing potential criminal activity or fraud. We'll argue that you installed the camera for legitimate security purposes. Monitoring a new puppy, protecting your property, and what you captured was incidental. Courts tend to be sympathetic when recordings expose fraud, even in two-party consent states. Worst case, even if the recording is ruled inadmissible, we have it as leverage in negotiations." We finalized the strategy. Lawrence would draft the complaint and file it first thing Wednesday morning, giving me 1 day to prepare. Judith would handle the restraining order application. I would go home tonight, act completely normal, and not give Veronica any indication I knew about the plan. "This is going to be hard," Judith warned. "You'll have to look her in the eye, have dinner with her, pretend everything is fine. Can you do that?" I thought about 3 years of her pretending to love me while planning my financial destruction. "If she can act, so can I said. Lawrence walked me to the elevator. "Gavin, one more thing. Check your beneficiary designations. Life insurance, retirement accounts, anything like that. If she's listed, We need to change it immediately. And review any passwords she might have, credit cards she has access to, anything that could be leveraged. My stomach dropped. I'd added her as a beneficiary on my life insurance policy 8 months ago, a gesture of commitment I'd thought was romantic. I'll handle it tonight, I said. The drive home felt surreal. I was heading back to my condo, where my girlfriend, who was plotting to defraud me, would be waiting with our puppy, expecting me to be the same trusting man who'd left that morning. I had to perform normalcy while knowing everything was a lie. Pull into the parking garage at 7:45 p.m., took the elevator to the 12th floor, unlocked the door with shaking hands. Veronica was in the kitchen cooking pasta, Cooper playing with a toy at her feet. She looked up and smiled, that same warm smile I'd fallen for 3 years ago. "Hey, you're late. Everything okay?" I set down my bag and crossed to kiss her, the gesture feeling like betrayal of myself. "Just got caught up in a project. Smells amazing." She stirred the sauce. "Just spaghetti carbonara, your favorite. Thought we could have a nice quiet dinner and watch a movie." We ate dinner at the kitchen island, making small talk about our days. She told me about a wedding she was planning for a client, a big event at a vineyard in Woodinville. Complained about a difficult mother of the bride who kept changing the flower arrangements. Asked about my day at work. I kept my answers vague, fighting the urge to confront her, to demand the truth. Instead, I played the role of attentive boyfriend, asking follow-up questions, laughing at her stories, refilling her wine glass. The whole time I was screaming internally, looking at this woman I'd trusted completely and seeing a stranger. After dinner, we settled on the couch with Cooper between us, some Netflix show playing that I couldn't focus on. Veronica leaned against me, her head on my shoulder, and I felt my skin crawl. This intimacy that had always felt natural now felt like contamination. At 10:30, she announced she was heading to bed, kissed me goodnight, and disappeared into the bedroom. I waited until I heard the shower running, then pulled out my laptop and started working through Lawrence's checklist. Logged into my life insurance account and removed her as beneficiary, replacing her with my parents. Changed passwords on my bank accounts, investment accounts, credit cards, everything. Checked my credit report for any unusual activity and found nothing suspicious yet. Reviewed our shared expenses and realized she'd been contributing almost nothing financially since moving in. The apartment was mine, the utilities in my name and paid from my account, groceries bought with my credit card. She'd occasionally paid for small things, takeout here and there, but nothing substantial. Her financial contribution to our household was essentially zero, which made Sienna's claim about domestic contributions even more audacious. I pulled up the Nanny Cam app and reviewed the recording from earlier, making sure it was saved properly. Watched Sienna and Veronica discuss the timeline again, their casual cruelty as they planned my exploitation. Made additional backup copies and sent them to a secure cloud storage account Veronica didn't know about. By the time I finished, it was after midnight. I crept into the bedroom where Veronica was sleeping peacefully, looking innocent in the dim light from the hallway. How many nights had I watched her sleep and felt grateful? How many mornings had I woken up next to her and thought about our future? All of it contaminated now by the truth of what she really was. The next day was worse. I went to work and tried to maintain normalcy while knowing the lawsuit would be filed the following morning. Checked the nanny cam periodically throughout the day. Veronica spent most of it working from home. She did event planning remotely several days a week and seemed completely normal. Around 2 p.m., Sienna came over again. I opened the app with my heart racing, recording immediately. They sat at the kitchen table this time, Sienna with her laptop open. "I've been doing more research on his trust fund," Sienna said. "The principal is protected, that's ironclad, but the income is definitely community-like property after 6 months. I found a case from 2019, very similar situation. Woman lived with her boyfriend for 8 months. He had significant investment income. She claimed half. Settled for $140,000. Veronica nodded. "So we're conservative at $250,000. Sienna smiled. "Very conservative. Honestly, given his family's wealth, we might push for more. Emotional distress, loss of opportunity costs from investing 3 years in this relationship. The richer they are, the more willing they are to pay to make problems disappear." I saved the recording and texted Lawrence. "They're at it again. Discussing specific case law now. More evidence." He responded immediately. "Perfect. Save everything. We file tomorrow at 9 a.m. Are you ready?" Was I ready? Ready to blow up my relationship, to expose Veronica and her sister, to face the emotional aftermath of losing someone I'd loved? No. But I was ready to protect myself, to refuse to be a victim, to fight back. I texted back, "Ready. Let's do it." That evening at home was torture. Veronica made dinner again, seeming extra attentive. Massaged my shoulders while I worked on my laptop, brought me a beer without asking, laughed at my jokes. I wondered if Sienna had coached her to increase the performance as they approached the 6-month mark, to cement the appearance of a committed partnership. Every gesture of affection felt like another layer of manipulation. Wednesday morning, I woke up at 6 a.m., too anxious to sleep. Lawrence had told me to expect contact from Veronica's phone around 9:30 or 10 once she'd been served with the lawsuit. I kissed her goodbye like normal, told her I had early meetings, and left for the office. Spent the morning unable to focus, checking my phone every few minutes. At 9:47 a.m., my phone rang. Veronica. I let it go to voicemail. She called again immediately, then again. Text messages started flooding in. Gavin, what the hell is this? A process server just came to the apartment with a lawsuit? You're suing me? For fraud? Call me now. I silenced my phone and kept working, or pretending to work. At 10:15, Lawrence called. She's been served. Her attorney will probably contact us by end of day. How are you holding up? I told him I was managing, which was barely true. The lawsuit was 23 pages long, meticulously detailed, citing the recordings as evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud. It named both Veronica and Sienna as defendants, sought compensatory and punitive damages, and requested a temporary restraining order preventing them from making any claims to my assets. Lawrence had also filed the notice to vacate, giving Veronica 30 days to move out. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for Friday morning, 2 days away. She's going to try to contact you, Lawrence warned. Don't engage. Don't respond to texts, calls, anything. All communication goes through me now. If she shows up at your office or tries to confront you in person, leave immediately and call me. We can't give her any opportunity to claim harassment or intimidation. I agreed, but part of me wanted the confrontation. Wanted to see her face when she realized I knew everything. By noon, my phone had 37 missed calls and twice as many text messages. Veronica's tone evolved from confused to angry to desperate. How could you do this? We can talk about this. You don't understand. It's not what you think. Please just call me. We can work this out. I didn't respond to any of it. At 2:30 p.m., my office phone rang. The receptionist. Mr. Thorne, there's a Veronica Hayes here to see you. Should I send her up? My heart raced. No. Tell her I'm unavailable and she needs to leave. If she refuses, call building security. 5 minutes later, the receptionist called back. She left, but she was very upset. Said you'd regret this. I documented the interaction in an email to Lawrence, adding it to the evidence file. The restraining order hearing was Friday at 10 a.m. I arrived at the courthouse with Lawrence and Judith to find Veronica and Sienna with their own attorney, a man named Douglas Kim, who had a reputation for aggressive family law practice. The judge, Honorable Patricia Lennon, reviewed our evidence packet, which included the nanny cam recordings, transcripts of the conversations, and documentation of my assets. Veronica's attorney argued the recordings were illegally obtained, that I'd violated privacy laws, that this was a vindictive attack on a loving relationship. Judith countered with citations about security cameras in private residences, legitimate purposes for surveillance, and the public interest in exposing fraud. The judge listened to excerpts from the recordings, her expression growing increasingly severe. Miss Hayes, Judge Lennon said, looking directly at Veronica, did you participate in the conversations captured on these recordings? Veronica's attorney started to object, but Veronica cut him off. Yes, but it's not. The judge held up her hand. Did you discuss a plan to claim a portion of Mr. Thorne's assets after cohabitating for 6 months? Silence. Then quietly, yes. Judge Lennon turned to Sienna. Miss Hayes, are you a paralegal? Sienna nodded. Did you advise your sister on how to structure a claim against Mr. Thorne's assets? Sienna glanced at her attorney, who looked like he wanted to disappear. I was just explaining Washington law. It's not illegal to understand your rights. The judge's voice turned icy. It's fraud to enter a relationship with predetermined intent to exploit it for financial gain. The recordings demonstrate clear evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud. She granted the temporary restraining order, preventing Veronica from making any claims to my assets pending the outcome of the fraud lawsuit. She also upheld the notice to vacate, giving Veronica 30 days, but noting she could apply for supervised removal of her belongings sooner if needed. Miss Hayes, the judge said, you should consider yourself fortunate that Mr. Thorne is proceeding civilly rather than pursuing criminal charges for fraud. I suggest you consult with your attorney about the wisdom of continuing this defense. We left the courthouse victorious, but I felt hollow. Lawrence clapped me on the shoulder. That went as well as we could have hoped. The restraining order is solid. She can't touch your assets now. Judith added. Her attorney will likely recommend settlement. These recordings are devastating. No jury would side with her. That weekend, I stayed with my parents in their house in Bellevue, not wanting to be in the condo while Veronica packed her things. My mother was horrified when I told her the full story, kept apologizing for encouraging the relationship, for thinking Veronica was such a nice girl. My father, more pragmatic, was just relieved I'd found out before marriage. Could have been much worse, he said. Could have cost you millions in divorce. This way it's just heartbreak and legal fees. Just heartbreak. Like that was a small thing. I'd loved her, planned a future with her. The betrayal cut deeper than any financial loss could have. On Monday, I returned to the condo to find it stripped of all traces of Veronica. Her clothes gone from the closet, her toiletries removed from the bathroom, her books and decorations disappeared from the shelves. Even Cooper's things were gone. Toys, bed, food bowls. I called her immediately, the first contact since the lawsuit. Where's Cooper? I demanded when she answered. Her voice was cold. My dog. I'm keeping him. He's not your dog. I paid for him. I have the receipt from the breeder. Good luck proving that matters. Possession is 9/10 of the law. She hung up. I called Lawrence. She took the dog. He sighed. Technically, Pets are property in Washington. If you have documentation proving you purchased him, you have a claim. But honestly, Gavin, is it worth fighting over? It was. Not because I cared so deeply about Cooper specifically, but because she'd taken something else from me, something that represented the future I'd imagined. I wanted it back. Add it to the lawsuit, I said. Lawrence added a claim for return of property, specifically the dog, with documentation of purchase. It was petty. I knew it was petty. But I was done letting her take things from me. The settlement negotiations dragged on for 6 weeks. Douglas Kim initially demanded $200,000 to make the case go away, claiming Veronica had suffered emotional distress and reputational harm. Judith laughed in his face. Your client is recorded on video planning fraud. We have her sister, a legal professional, coaching her on how to exploit the law. You have no case. We'll see you in court. Kim came back 2 weeks later with a revised offer. Veronica would relinquish all claims to my assets in exchange for me dropping the fraud lawsuit and paying her $50,000. For emotional distress, he said. Judith countered with our offer. Veronica relinquishes all claims, returns Cooper, pays $15,000 in legal fees, and signs a non-disclosure agreement preventing her from discussing the case or our relationship publicly. Kim rejected it. We went to mediation in December, 4 months after I'd discovered the recordings. The mediator, a retired judge named Eleanor Hartwick, listened to both sides and reviewed the evidence. Took Veronica and her attorney into a private room for 90 minutes. When they emerged, Veronica looked defeated. She agreed to our terms with one modification. She'd pay $10,000 in legal fees instead of $15,000, and she'd return Cooper immediately. In exchange, I'd agree to mutual non-disclosure and wouldn't pursue criminal charges or bar complaints against Sienna. I accepted. The final settlement was signed in January, almost 7 months after I'd discovered the plan. Veronica returned Cooper on a cold afternoon, handing over his leash without making eye contact. I hope you're happy, she said quietly. I hope destroying my life was worth it. I looked at her, this woman I'd loved for 3 years, who'd betrayed me so completely. I didn't destroy your life. I protected mine. You destroyed your own life when you decided to con me. She left without responding. I never saw her again. Sienna faced professional consequences. My attorney filed a complaint with the Washington State Bar Association regarding her conduct. She wasn't disbarred, but received a formal reprimand and mandatory ethics training. Her firm quietly let her go 6 months later. I spent the next year rebuilding my sense of trust, first in myself for missing the signs, then gradually in others. Went to therapy to process the betrayal, to understand how I'd been so blind. Dated cautiously, with background checks and slower timelines. Told new partners about my trust fund up front, watched how they reacted, looked for red flags I'd missed with Veronica. Cooper became a surprisingly good companion through it all, a living reminder that I'd fought back and won. I'm more careful now, more guarded. Some would say cynical, but I prefer realistic. I learned that love without verification is just hope, and hope isn't enough when dealing with people who see relationships as transactions. The nanny cam is still on my bookshelf, still recording, a permanent security measure. Not because I expect fraud again, but because I refuse to be unprepared. People ask if I'm angry, if I hate Veronica for what she tried to do. I don't. Hate requires energy I don't have anymore. She gambled on my ignorance and lost. That's all. The universe gave me a gift that day when I opened the puppy cam and saw her sister on my couch. It showed me the truth before I married her, before she succeeded, before the damage was permanent. I took that gift and used it, gathered evidence, hired competent attorneys, fought back strategically, and I won. Not just legally, but personally. I kept my assets, my dignity, and my dog. Veronica walked away with nothing but a legal bill and a reputation destroyed by her own recorded words. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be a victim. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.